I'm in Seattle, Washington, standing in front of a $3.5 million engineering marvel, unveiled just 1 month ahead of the city's much anticipated World's Fair. On March 24th, 1962, the Seattle monorail opens. The Century 21 Exposition, better known as the Seattle World's Fair, is scheduled to open in April 1962. The venue for the fair is located north of downtown and features the newly constructed Space Needle. To transport guests between the fair and downtown Seattle, West German transportation company Allweg constructs a monorail. It takes 11 months to build at a cost of $3.5 million and opens to the public nearly a month before the fair. It is made up of two trains, one red and one blue, each with its own dedicated rail. The rails are comprised of 70-foot concrete beams supported by 30-foot tall Y-shaped columns. During the 6 months of the fair, the monorail carries 8 million guests, easily covering the cost of construction and even turning a profit for Allweg. Following the fair, the monorail becomes the property of the Century 21 Corporation, which sells it to the city for $600,000 in 1965. Coming up, we'll learn more about the monorail's construction and history, including improvements to the monorail and what it's like today. We'll also learn more about famous people who rode the monorail during the World's Fair back in 1962. And we'll learn about some of the monorail's accidents over the years. Don't forget to check out Today in History in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. There's a link in the description. Some famous people who rode the monorail to the fair in 1962 included Vice President Lyndon Johnson, former Vice President and future President Richard Nixon, and Elvis Presley, who was in town to film the movie It Happened at the World's Fair. You can still ride the monorail in Seattle today. It goes back and forth between two stations with no stops in between. On the southern end is the Westlake Center, an office tower and shopping mall in downtown Seattle. On the northern end is the Seattle Center, where the World's Fair was held back in '62. The Seattle Center is today the location of the Space Needle, the Museum of Pop Culture, Climate Pledge Arena, which is where the NHL team, the Seattle Kraken, plays, and also the Chihuly Garden and Glass Museum, as well as other venues. From the station at Westlake Center, you can connect to the Metro line. Seattle's monorail is just under a mile. At the time of the World's Fair, it was just over a mile, extending a bit past its current Westlake Center station. The West German company that constructed the monorail is the same one that built Disneyland's monorail 3 years earlier. The two original Seattle monorail trains have never been replaced and have now traveled more than 1 million miles. In 1978, Seattle decided to do a so-called monorail spruce-up by repainting the blue train a different shade of blue and painting the red train green. This was meant to match Seattle's theme colors, which were featured in the uniforms of the city's 1976 NFL expansion team, the Seahawks. The color change was very unpopular, and the trains were returned to their original colors a few years later. Between 1986 and 1988, the monorail underwent some extensive renovations. These included the moving of the southern station to its current location at the Westlake Center. Only one accident was reported on the monorail during the fair, and not until its penultimate day. A packed red train overshot the Westlake loading platform and hit a bumper at a low rate of speed. No injuries were reported, and the train was back in service about 2 hours later. Two larger incidents occurred in the 1970s, each involving trains overshooting their stations. In one, 26 people were injured, and in the other, 15 were injured. In 2004, an electrical short circuit caused a fire to break out in the blue train. 8 people suffered minor injuries. In 2023, a 14-year-old boy from Phoenix, Arizona was struck and killed by one of the trains while he was standing on the roof of a building under the monorail's route, spray painting graffiti. He is the only fatality in the monorail's history. While visiting Seattle and riding the monorail, it seems impossible not to think of the 1990s Simpsons monorail episode, guest starring Phil Hartman as Lyle Landley, who is based on the character Henry Hill from the musical The Music Man. Monorail, 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 monorail. They say these things are awfully loud. It glides as softly as a cloud. Enough of that. If you like what you've seen here, please make sure to like and subscribe, and know that you can watch another great Mr. Lewis video here and another one right here. Thanks for watching.